Morning. Now, usually when I start Synth and Sensibility, we have a bit of an amusing side. This time, I don't know if you've seen this. This has come out recently. And I'm going to read this to you as the intro, on the slightly amusing, but also a little scary. Possibly cursed SP1200. This SP1200 belonged to my former roommate who had bought it for $500 from a woman in Queens, New York, who said her son was murdered. We were living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, New York at the time. Ironically, 5 years later, in our apartment, my roommate was violently murdered with a carpet knife in his bedroom studio by his then ex-girlfriend, who learnt that he broke up with her because he got another woman pregnant. His blood was all over the SP1200, and after the funeral, his mother gave me legal possession of all his music equipment, after she was told by a spirit doctor that the SP1200 is cursed and that she must never touch it herself. This unfortunate incident was 5 years ago, and I have since moved back to Seattle and cleaned up all the blood off this SP1200 and looked at by a technician who said it works perfectly. I recently had a dream about my old roommate who told me that I needed to part ways with the SP1200 and sell it for the exact price he paid for it, or his spirit will be damned forever. Then his mother called me last night telling me that the spirit doctor called her and told her I needed to sell this machine for $500 or my roommate's soul will never rest. I'm going to slow this down just a second. Of course this scares the crap out of me. I never believed in the spirit world and I don't know if there is an afterlife. But if holding on to this sample is preventing my former roommate from a peaceful death, then I think selling it is the right thing to do. My dream and phone call from his mother is too much of a coincidence. I think this is something I need to listen to, and I'm admittedly a stubborn person. I don't want to withhold any of this information because I would hate to be the cause of anyone else's losing their life if there's really such a thing as curses. But if I had a weird dream and his mother got a phone call from a spirit doctor who said something similar to what I dreamt, then there must be some truth to the whole spirit world shit. So there it is. Everything I know about the SP1200 is out in the open. So for those who are looking for an SP1200, slightly used, cleaned, there you go. That is for you. And I think it had a total price of $500. On that note. Hello and welcome to Synth and Sensibility episode number 3 with a slight cut from stuff up on my end of things. Today I'm joined by John Shea, who is a Brisbane recording artist who is going to give us some insight onto some of his views about synths and music tech and come along for the ride.
Indeed.
First off though, I'm going to do a little bit of news. I feel sorry for John's head because he's going to get cut like that.
Oh.
And how about this? I'll put it onto the big screen. So, first thing I wanted to talk about was there's a brand new music store at Stones Corner in Brisbane. And the best thing is that they supply coffee. So you can go there and have a lovely cup of coffee while you're browsing the store. Now, at the moment, it's mainly drums and guitar-based gear, although rumour has it that they're going to be getting synths that begin with the letter M and might have a couple of O's in the middle to actually have on display as well. So it could be a great store to go and have a look at in the new year. And it's air conditioned, which is really good in this horrible, horrible heat at the moment. The other thing I want to kind of talk about briefly in Brisbane is that there's a fairly new production room, I guess it's called Sample Space, and you can go and check that out. Effectively, it allows you to go and have a look at lots of DJ gear, get some experience, but it also has production rooms. And if I have a look at some of the photos, if I bring them up, there's various interesting bits of equipment that you can go and play with if you're looking at more the synth style of things. And I think that the Zero Coast there, SPDX. So go check that out if you're interested in having a look there. I think the rates are reasonably okay. So if you can have a look on here, it tells you how much it is per hour to go and actually use the equipment that they've got in there. and they've got deals as well. Now, I haven't gone and checked this out personally myself. I would like to go and do that over the next couple of weeks, but we'll see how we go. This weekend in Sydney... And you can look at the rest of that. But effectively, this is part of SydFest. I was about to say Synthfest. I think I had that stuck in my head from last time. It looks interesting, obviously, a more modular experience, but I think they're running it for 3 days on the 10th to the 12th at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. It's actually really interesting to kind of see more of these kinds of shows coming up, and there's surprisingly a large number of them, which I wasn't aware of until I actually got a chance to do some investigation. So that's kind of cool. I guess so that's kind of it for the general news of things that are out there and to go and have a look at. And there's your head back there, John.
Thank you kindly.
You're welcome. So I guess the other bits of news, I think it was not the first episode. I talked a little bit about the new work that's on the MIDI side of things that are coming out. I'm going to play you a little video that has actually now been released publicly, so I'm allowed to do this. And in fact, I think it's on the front of the MIDI.org website, which I didn't realise until the other day.
Very nice.
When you listen to it, the voice might sound slightly familiar, so I'll play it for you and you can have a listen. What are the possibilities with Property Exchange? Imagine your customer has bought a new MIDI device. It could be a keyboard, drum machine, a desktop unit, rack mount, or effects unit. They could work in any number of sequencing software, on Mac, PC, iOS, a web browser, or even on hardware. And they want to take your nice new MIDI device, and they want to integrate it into their setup. They connect it up, and then what? Hopefully there's a plugin or application that has been created for their environment, on their OS. Maybe there is a third-party librarian. There may be a MIDI learn option, or they could try and figure out the MIDI control change and NRPN messages. Some brave souls may even try to decipher syshex. Property Exchange removes this headache by getting the device to describe what it can do and how to do it. The MIDI device can describe to the other end what it is, what controller it has, the best way to set it up, what programs it has, and even provide a way to edit those programs and settings directly and keeping the two sides in sync. It may even allow a snapshot to back up and restore the device, so it can be in the correct state for the user when they reopen their last session. Let's see this in action. This is a tool for testing MIDI CI and PE workflows. It can act as both the software sequencer initiating contact. So this video is actually all online, so I'm going to FM synth. Stop that there, and you can actually go and have a look at that yourself. I'll put that link in the description at the bottom, and you can actually have a look. So John, given that you know a little bit about this as far as what's been out there announced, what's your opinion about some of this stuff that's coming through?
Well, I guess look at the problem we're trying to solve. As a synth user, multiple devices, being able to just plug something in and have it automatically know what the device is and what it's capable of is a pretty important productivity improvement for anyone working with synths of the modern era, shall we say.
Yeah. And I think that's effectively the actual sort of driving force. This is actually there's 3 parts to the MIDI CI work that's actually being undertaken. So one is protocol. So the idea of being able to switch to different protocols as opposed to just being restricted to the current MIDI 0.1 protocol. And there is some work on that in the background. The other one is profiles, which is a sort of an interesting one, where profiles is like saying, you're a drawbar organ and I'm a drawbar organ, so let's make sure that we use the same kind of controllers and the same messaging and the same setup, and This means that when I use this controller in this way, that you're going to know how to respond. And there's actually a lot more to that. That's kind of like a very, very basic way of looking at it. So there's actually some really good movement within sort of the MMA and RMA to try and actually get that kind of usability. To be honest, it reminds me a lot of it's kind of where plugins have kind of been for the last little while.
Well, I guess if we look back, all the way through the late 80s and early 90s, we're still using exactly the same protocol, the same capability to change programs, manipulate things in real time through CC controllers, and a bit of sysx for librarian purposes. That's been the current state for decades.
Yeah, but you've got your plugins. Like I've got Korg Gadget, and it's obviously got a range of different soft synths in it. But when you actually go and use it, it says, for this pattern, well, here's all the parameters for this soft synth. So it actually knows how to do all of that. And I think that's been what's really kind of missing.
Yeah, definitely. That's been a big gap, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's almost too difficult. Well, it has been up until this point, really kind of too difficult to do for all the hardware. And for those of us who are hardware people, and again, I would really like to see this happen, not just with the big manufacturers. I think it'd be really important to see the small manufacturers who can just go. They don't need to build, specific software or, have to go to a huge amount of effort to try and support 4 different, platforms. Because what have you got? You got iOS, Mac, Windows, and now web browsers really are the 4, the really big platforms. And it'd be nice not to have to go, I picked up this really old synthesizer and, can't use it with anything but some old version of Mac or...
some ancient librarian program.
And hope that the Windows
didn't
XP...
run until...
Yeah, that's right. Hope that the Windows XP application still runs on Windows 10 or, whatever. So, and I think, so I think that there's some really good, hopefully, sort of good outcomes on that. So obviously, these things take a long time to come and to be actually released. So I think you'll probably see a release in the next, sort of 12 months, I think. But we'll see what goes on.
Thumbs up MMA.
Yes, indeed. And hopefully we'll get some more news as it comes out in the next 6 months. So I guess that brings up to what is the next big thing that's coming out over the next couple of weeks.
I wonder what that could be.
You can let.
Let's think. What happens this time of the year?
In Anaheim. And it's not
ready.
Disneyland.
Disneyland for some, I mean.
Yeah, so NAMM is coming up, which is probably the biggest trade show worldwide. And I may be going to it, which I'm very excited about, but it's 5.5.
Very jealous.
5.5 floors of way too much music gear. And in fact, on the website, they actually give you an electronic planner, so you can actually go and pick all the different supplies you want to go and have a chat to. Anyway.
Yes, so for viewers outside of Australia, everywhere is far away.
14 hours of straight flight.
Everywhere is a long-haul flight. So we need to sort of, I guess, decide carefully what travel we're going to get ourselves into.
Mind you, I'm going to cross my fingers for Super Booth.
Well, that's another destination.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to happen.
So, so what are the dates again?
The dates of this is, I think, 24th to the 28th of January. So I'll take my camera around and take some shots and take some videos and come back and try and do a report over the last little bit. And hopefully we'll be able to see some leaks or some of the stuff that's actually been leaked. So we've actually had a range of things. So I'm going to ask your opinion on the things that have been not officially leaked, but there's curiosity about. So if I bring up the full screen again, that way, and so
Ah, I've heard about this one.
The first one is this. Hang on, it's a bit of a horrible screen, but anyway, we'll work with it. So the first one is this Volca that. Let me bring this up a bit bigger, which is the supposedly Volca modular. Now this is still a, could be a fantastic spoof, or a fake. But what do you reckon?
It seems to be, I guess, the next step in the Volca evolution is to collect all your tiny little Volcas into one comprehensive massive desktop.
It kind of defeats the purpose, really, doesn't it? It's kind of a bit of a. I find it interesting that they're really kind of going for this sort of more, according to this leak, is that sort of pin-based kind of patching as opposed to the 3.5 mil.
I was going to say, what have we got to work with in terms of CVN?
Yeah. So it's almost like is it the WorkStat that does something similar.
Yes.
So that's kind of, for me, that's interesting. It keeps the cost down
And the Bastel.
too. Yeah. And I actually wonder if more and more modular shouldn't actually just kind of go this way anyway.
The bad part is if you bend it and break it off. That's
but it's the leads are cheaper. They're just pin leads, and you can buy them. I mean, mind you, they're all pretty short too. And not exactly shielded or any of the other things. So of course, it looks
so a bit of an envelope, bit of a filter.
Yeah, it's kind of got it does have CV in as a actual 3.5. But it'd be very interesting. I'd be it's got folding. It's interesting. So who knows?
A few different waveforms, maybe.
Yeah. So who knows? And if it's real, I'll try and get some real photos of it. So of course the second part of that is, and again I'm sorry about the poor. I might see if I can. There we go. That's a bit better. It's sort of can move it around. Is this new Volca drum, which I'm not 100% sure about. I don't know if I'm that keen on it.
So we've seen lots of digital synth drum products. I guess on the modular side, there's a lot of things happening there. PO32, an algorithm representing the drum sound. So it looks similar to that type of product, but it's got the sequencer built in there as well. I guess the big question is how many voices does it support? It's got what have we got? Any sort of voice selection, or is it just simply a mono drum sound like the Volca kick?
Well, no, here we go. Got parts down here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got 6 parts. So a bit close to the microphone there. So it's got 6 parts. So that's actually not too bad.
Okay, well that's a whole lot of sound then.
Yeah,
out of one box.
The problem I have with the Volcas
apart from no MIDI out.
Well, I mean, usually
for any of the sequences.
Well, the thing with the MIDI Volcas is there we go. Oop, hang on. The other one. That's the one I need to put in there. So the problem I have always had with the MIDI with the Volcas is that they do amazing sounds, but the sequencer for me is so limiting. You kind of go, well, I've got this sort of line, and then that's it. Sort of like, and it gets a bit repetitive after a while, and I just feel that the Volcas are. It's almost like if they could do a Volca sequencer,
proper
sequencer with proper patches and proper all the rest of it, that'd be really cool. And just control all the other Volcas via that. Well, they did that. I mean, they kind of did the Volca mixer based on the fact that you've now got all these Volcas and put it together. But the Volca mixer was like only 3 channel.
A bit pointless.
Which is silly when you've got, at that stage, 6 Volcas that had come out.
Yeah.
So,
there's definitely other options for small form factor mixers, including battery powered ones. If you need to be portable.
I think, and there's so many good options for drums at the moment. So, I mean, you've got the Arturia stuff. The Impact has got very good reviews. There's the TRS. They're a bit bigger, obviously. But I don't know.
TRS is a hefty beast.
Yeah, it is a hefty beast, I guess. I guess if you're looking for something small, and not just that, a lot of people do like the Beats once they do the snare mod. But you know. Anyway. All right, so
that's going to give you different synth drum sounds, sort of back to the 80s maybe for...
yeah, but okay, look, again, to me, you've got the old drum machines had more patterning and more ability to kind of change up. I mean, you had at least enough to go, oh, I'm going to flick between a verse and a chorus and an outro and an intro, and I'm also going to be able to do 20 songs on it.
Yeah, which is, you know, DR550.
Yeah, that's right. It's sort of like, why would I... I mean, I know the sounds are probably better, but it's almost like they always seem a bit weak on the sequencing. Excuse me. So...
it looks interesting, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also from Korg, they released this image, which was the we're going to do something, but we're not really going to do something. And then I think, oh God, I hope I get the right one. Yep, there we go. So then this has come out. This is this Minilog XD, which is kind of... So the rumour mill is that this is taking the digital the digital oscillators from the Prolog and putting it into a Minilog and putting it into the Minilog. So cut down, you know, a really sort of super cut down Prolog, I guess.
Which may remove any of the user programs for oscillator design, possibly.
Yeah, well, that's one of the big one of the big selling points of the Prolog is this kind of ability to go and...
They did have their own SDK.
Yeah, with their own hardware and all the rest of it. And there's been people who have come out and actually released stuff along that lines. Yeah. I'm just not sure. I don't know. I was never... I think I listened to Minilog a few times, but I was always a little bit... It never grabbed me, I think, personally. So hopefully, if this could grab it. It looks like a nice piece of kit.
That's got the waveform display.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the best selling points of both the Minilog and the Monolog. Is this a joystick up here? So if I have a look at that, is that a joystick?
Could be.
So
pretty much looks like one.
Yeah, and I've got. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. So I don't know if they're hiding the shot has actually worked very well, considering everyone's kind of done that. So next is this APC. Let's see if I can move this up. Actually, I could do that. There we go. This APC, which is the MPC. That's kind of like a push mixed with an MPC Live. Now this is sort of again been very much rumour mill, and whether it would be released for NAMM. But people have obviously now racing off and saying it's the Ableton in a box solution, and I think there's some other. I don't know if I grabbed the other photo. So there's sort of other photos of it there as well, and there's one about the back, and it's just got all the standard sort of ins and outs going on it. But that could be very interesting as well. Also, very much a departure from the 16 pad.
I was going to say it's a lot of tiny little buttons there for big-fingered folk.
Yeah, but as someone who uses like the Deluge, it's not that bad. I mean, you don't have any velocity.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Well, not the Deluge.
So you're certainly a departure from the traditional MPC style 4x4.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that's necessarily a bad thing. Because they've had the Live and the MPC-X, and I think it's funny that they've come full circle from having this whole thing where they went, we're going to gradually get more and more into the computer, and you can only have it with a computer.
Physical accessory for that.
Yeah, and it just becomes like a controller, and they did this with the sort of the APC-40, and then they did it with the MPC Renaissance, and then everyone went, but that's not what we want in an MPC, and now they've kind of gone right back to, yes, it's hardware, and we like you to have it connected, but you don't need to. You can still take it live, and I think that's a really interesting move back to that sort of hardware.
So does it have analog inputs on it?
Yeah, it does. It has analog inputs and outputs. So there's another picture online which I didn't grab. I should have. But it's got even mic in and stuff like that. So it's obviously does sound well. It might. I don't know if it does live sampling, because a lot of these I've seen more equipment go away from the ability to live sample.
It's supposed to sideload.
Yeah, and just come, pull up some library and upload it. But I don't know. I kind of think, what's the point of having a sampler if it doesn't actually sample? Like the montage is like this, right? And the MoDX has kind of got this whole ability to. It even has analog inputs for doing things like vocoding, and onboard effects and using that. But you can't actually sample into it. But you can pull samples in and use them. So it's a bit of an interesting way of sort of, you're still stuck with having a computer somewhere. So
it's a lot of heritage.
Yeah,
in a product like this.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I'd be very keen to see if this was going to be released. I think it feels like it might be a bit too soon. I get the feeling this is not going to be released for NAMM, or if they do, the Akai brand is really holding the cards close to the chest, because this was an FCC was it FCC leak?
Oh, okay.
So this has been off to there. But I did notice it's USB 3 on the back, not just USB 2.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of cool. There's been a very, I don't know.
So all your drum samples, your clips.
Yeah.
Lots of.
That's right. That's right. I'm just going to find. Okay. So
Here we go.
The last leak. Now you can talk about this one because you know more about it than I do. I'll put this up. I won't put it over your face. There we go. So this is the hypnosis effect, and
from our good friends in Greece.
Yes, you can tell their name because that slipped my mind all of a sudden.
Dreadbox.
Dreadbox. Thank you. Apologies to Dreadbox. It looks like a synthwave video clip from YouTube. To be honest, they've really picked the audience, I think, on this one. That very sort of, especially very digital reverbs and that sort of very 80s kind of sound, I think.
So I think we've got again, we'll have to look at the material. I think we've got a couple of different effects topologies here. You can see that we've got the spring reverb, digital delay, and a BBD effect for the chorus and flanging. So covering a lot of bases there in terms of all your classic classic effect styles. I'm curious about the routing options and how the effects flow and whether you can change the routing or not.
I don't think so. I think it's, from what limited stuff I've seen, it's almost very fixed. It's kind of like, yes, you've got it, but you have it in this order. I don't think you can say, oh, well, I'll have, delay before you chorus. So I think it really is going in that order.
Sure. Looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like the fact that it's a live effects tool in the sense that, there's something I really kind of, there's a lot of good effects out there, but a lot of them are very, they're not very hands-on. And Strymon do a lot of hands-on effects, which are stereo, and they're MIDI syncable and all the rest of it. It's not cheap, but they're worth it in the sense that you can get in there and do sweeps of effects, which I think is something I miss from a lot of things, is this ability to kind of play with the effects in real time, especially for live performance. So I'm curious to hear this one when it comes out a bit more.
And I'm wondering what the actual display is telling us. Is that a Magic Eye tube level thing, or is it a?
Is it just a glowy?
Is it a VFD maybe? Or
I don't know. Well, you can't really see anything. Considering it's actually a reasonably clear picture of the rest of it, I think this almost just feels like, I've got a tube, a pink vacuum tube or something. Is it going to? I'm not sure on this one, but again, there'll be demos and stuff come out soon, so I reckon that'll come out pretty.
So
quick.
what was the very glarish 80s rack unit with similar styling? I think there was an ART.
Yeah, the ARTs that were that pink and green and and they did a couple of them that were very along that lines. Everyone else was very kind of boring with their rack units, especially during the 80s. It was like, shades of black. You might get
the 80s brushstroke colours.
Yeah, that's right. And it kind of reminds me of that sort of OB6 kind of pinstriping and stuff like that, which was still a very nice looking keyboard. Yeah, so I'm actually kind of impressed with that. I think the only other leak that I don't actually have a picture for, but I do know a little bit about, is the Waldorf Kyra.
Oh, I have not heard about this one.
So this,
I think I have.
yes.
Yes, so this started off as a very large DSP synth project.
It's not DSP, it's FPGA.
Oh, of course, yeah, yes.
Right, so, and it was done by a single guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I assume it's a single guy.
And they found a manufacturing partner.
Yeah, that's right.
Or
It was
licensee.
originally called the Valkyrie.
That's right, yeah.
And it's like not the first, I think, but sort of the first of this sort of FPGA kind of synthesis, and it's got like some ridiculous
very large scale voice count, hasn't it?
Yeah, like 10 oscillators per voice or something stupid. I mean, don't quote me on that. But it was that very much that anything you kind of want to do, huge wall of sound. But
yes. And it had some UI challenges at the time.
It kind of
for the original version.
It kind of looked like a Access TI, a wide Access TI with lots of buttons, and to me,
from a distance, it was probably pretty similar.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one to look at, see where it's going to go, and if it's actually going to be more synthesis methods, or if it's just going to be, well, we can have 10 oscillators thrown at standard subtractive kind of thing, and yes, the sound goes nuts, and you can get really great things out of it, but it's still
It'll be very interesting to see what Waldorf can do with the UI if you've got so many parameters at your command.
Well, a lot of people like the Blowfields. I haven't experienced one yet, but to me it sounds to me like the problem I got with the Blowfields is this kind of you've got 4 knobs and it just kind of, but supposed to be a lot of people love them and they're quick to use and quick to navigate once you kind of get to them. So, and they've been doing it a lot longer.
I was going to say a lot of industrial design, human-machine interface experience.
Well, how many, they've been around for how many years now? 20, 25 years, something like that. Have to look that up. But I mean, that's the thing. You'd want to hope that they, especially for something that's going to be such a monster as far as opportunities and routing and modulation, and you kind of don't want to get it wrong.
No.
Because and I think that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing with a lot of the modern synths is they've kind of gone, let's go more knobs, more buttons, because if you've got to delve, 5 menu items deep to do something, you've lost everybody. Anyway, that's my humble opinion.
Well, that's going to be interesting when it comes out.
Yeah, I know, and they are supposed to going to be doing it at NAMM. So if I can get close to it, I'll have a bit of a listen. As long as it's not like the Moog 1 incident from last time, which is that whole thing about.
Vendors.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. You need to have like ticketing systems, and maybe they do it now. I don't know, but
press pass.
Yeah, I'm not getting one of those, unfortunately. As nice as that would be, but yeah, I think that'd be really interesting to kind of be able to have a listen. But I get the feeling if they've only got a couple, that booth is going to be shockers. You're just not going to get onto it.
And I guess it depends on how distinctive the oscillators are going to sound as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. I mean, is it we're going to, just because we've got lots and lots of oscillators, does that make the good oscillators, or is it just going to be lots and lots of crappy oscillators that sound good because there's just so many of them, or what? So it'll be really interesting to kind of see. But it's like 100 and something voices, and it's sort of like it doesn't have any worry about. Excuse the truck in the background. It doesn't have any worry about the size of processing. Anyway, we should move on before we get too caught up in that. So, you had a topic.
I did have a topic, and one of the things that's come into my mind of late is where are we now in terms of synthesis and the enormous options and technology available to artists. And at one end of the spectrum we have the likes of Omnisphere, Arturia, UVI, all of the classic synths and their emulations on PCs, mobile devices, incredible variety of choice. Somewhere along the line, we've got to a point where we've reached what we were struggling for a name for it. We just said, well, peak synth. Right? So not talking about the Novation.
Novation, not the Novation, yeah.
So when did we get to a point where synthesis technology was good enough to get the job done, and what's come thereafter is really, I guess, icing on the cake. So that's been something that we've had a mutual think about, and we don't have any photos or clips lined up for each other. So this is, I guess, spoiler alert.
So I get to go and do this afterwards.
Yep. And we said, okay, let's have a think about when that time was and what those instruments were and why they were, I guess, somewhat milestone designs at the time. So who's going to go first?
I'm curious to go with you. I want to hear where you want to go first.
Okay. All right. Well, I've actually got two products, and one hardware, one software.
Yep.
And we'll talk about those. But I guess let's have a look at the journey that we've all been on over these many years / decades / too many years, and obviously we've had subtractor synthesis literally for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah.
We're still seeing regurgitations of the same subtractor synthesis techniques.
Well, in most,
for example.
Well, not just that, and most synths that are coming out are forms of subtractive synthesis. I mean, it seems to be that's, we're almost, there are some outliers in that respect, but most things are along that lines. We get some wavetable every now and then, got some sampling, but some of the more interesting ones just haven't been recreated or whatever. But even probably the biggest research, or not even research, it's probably the biggest modern synthesis would have to be granular, as far as
a new technique.
As far as a new technique is concerned.
Yeah. So I guess back in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, we saw a big proliferation of the last generations of polyphonic analog synths.
Yep.
And we started to see the introduction of the first generation widely available digital synths, FM, phase distortion, from the likes of Yamaha and Casio.
Yep.
Roland came into the scene as well with the D50 and LA.
LA, yeah.
So the 80s were an interesting time in terms of no internet whatsoever in the consumer space, very limited computing power, and we really needed to wait throughout the 90s to slowly grind our way through the various Intel releases.
And there's still things now that are very difficult to do on the processing power. One of the big things that that came out late 90s, early 2000s was a bit of additive synths with Kawai doing the K5s and the K5000s, but they cheated. Right? This is a bit of the things that they never quite realised. You had this sort of ability to add all these add synths, sort of
partials.
added partials and stuff. Thank you. But what they did is they actually pre-processed them.
Okay.
And then used that, right? So they didn't actually do them in real time. And that's how they could do it on what they had, which was embedded hardware at the time when everyone else was still sort of kind of doing, Rompler-based or, that kind of thing. There really wasn't, and VA was a little bit of virtual analog, but even that was kind of very limited and restricted as well.
Yeah, so I guess we started to see really the emergence and then the dominance of digital,
Yep.
and that was overcoming all of the limitations of analog design at the time, which was basically expensive to produce,
Yep.
particularly in a poly,
Yeah.
and even with the voice chips in your Juno 106s, the SEM chips and so forth, still expensive to design an analog poly.
Yeah.
And the limitations that it had at the time were you're still locked into that single architecture, shall we call it, be it subtractive, be it FM or the phase distortion.
Yeah.
Eventually, you're going to exhaust the possibilities of that particular synth architecture. Now,
I disagree with you on that one.
Okay.
Okay, so FM's a great example,
Mm.
right? So, you had DX1 through to pretty much the DX7 was pretty much the same thing.
Mm.
The DX1 that was down in Melbourne sounds just like a DX7. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know why you'd spend lots of money when you could buy a DX7, but it's effectively like two DX7s in one. Now that was stagnated for years and years and years as far as I was concerned, right? I mean, it hasn't really moved. And then you're looking at, and everyone was doing 4-ops and, and whatever.
Yeah.
What's just come out now is all the 8-op stuff.
Mm.
And suddenly it's an extension of it, but they're kind of now putting a lot more into it. Like, don't want to rave on about the montage, but its FM engine, the FMX stuff, is a leaps and bounds above what's in there. So they are progressing that technology. So I wouldn't say they're run out.
Yes.
They haven't reached, I don't know if they've reached the limit. I wonder if they've reached the limit on usability.
I guess so, yeah.
Do you really need more than, I feel like Bill Gates, don't need more than 640K, but do you really need more than 8 operators in an FM patch when you can also then have 8 FM patches all layered onto each other?
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, continue.
So the other trend, or the other, I guess, market demand at the time was multi-timbral synths.
Yes.
So we had obviously 16 MIDI channels. We want a different voice on everyone. Right, drums on channel 10. That's fine. How are we going to address that on a single synth? And we started to see a big increase in multi-timbral synths throughout the late 80s and certainly into the 90s.
And certainly with that came the increase in voices.
Indeed, yeah.
Right.
So
when we're talking
the race was on.
The race was on. You had something like from 16, a couple of 6 voice analog, and then suddenly you got synths coming out with 256 voices. Well, not suddenly, but over years you kind of got that kind of increase in voices.
Yeah.
Until the point where people were going, well, I can hold down every single key and I'm not going to run out of voices across every single channel.
All the stuff that we take for granted now.
Yeah, that's right.
At the time, you would have to have maybe an MT32
or several of them. Yeah.
Depending on your composition demands at the time, or a big stack of single oscillator topology synths, and try and get your variety from your synth collection as well.
Yeah.
So I guess that's that introduction to that sort of that moment of peak synth, and we have this big period where obviously the rise of the DAW and desktop, and diversions along the way, the renaissance of modular.
Which is interesting for me, because you've effectively gone from, hundreds and hundreds of voices, but almost a reduced kind of ability to manage it.
Oh, of course, yeah. So we went from a dedicated synth having all of that routing taken care of for you. Maybe you could adjust a couple of parameters along the way, but in a single synth you had dozens or hundreds of envelopes. Same thing with the LFOs and so forth. So the manufacturers took care of all that routing for you inside the synth. So I guess we're getting to that that sort of milestone event where, and it's not that we're not necessarily seeing a lack of innovation. It's the question of have we got enough synth power that we could go off, master that instrument or the collection of instruments, and be happy with that capability. Not necessarily forevermore.
I was gonna say, I don't know. Is anyone who's into music completely happy?
No, of course not. But
I mean,
this is all hypothetical, of course. So, if you were to be struck in a universe where all that manufacturing ceased, and we look at the musical output at the time as well, because obviously synths and drum machines have had an enormous impact on popular culture and genres of music. So I guess it leads us to this point where we've got some pretty serious synth power up our sleeves at the time. We're still, I guess, in the very early days of PCs and home computing power. Still issues around storage, no connectivity whatsoever, other than very limited dial-up services. So we're casting our mind way back.
Yeah.
And let's not forget.
When modems made cool noises.
Oh, indeed, yes, yeah. So my first candidate, and this is the hardware version, is the Kurzweil K2000.
Ooh.
So this was released in 1990.
Yeah.
So Ray Kurzweil put together a fully decked out, all the expansions, sampling option, large waveform memory for the time, and a variable architecture synthesis technology. So that's what marketing called
the VAST.
VAST. That's correct. Yeah. So they're routing algorithms inside the synth were marketed as such, and the VAST capabilities were reasonably comprehensive at the time. They had native subtractive synthesis, so some standard waveforms there. The signal chains also allowed you to add in your DSP processing as well.
Yep.
So that brought in some of your wave shapers, your distortions, PWM functions as well, and of course it had a big selection of filters as well. So lots of different filter types and onboard EQ and FX as well. So at the time, 1990, that gave you a big 24 voice count, which was impressive at the time.
That's very impressive, yeah.
And of course, that line of synth has continued.
Up to the P3K.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I saw one of those.
Yeah. So the synthesis capabilities didn't actually stop with the small selection of onboard native waveforms, because being a sampler and having those samples on ROM, there's a big collection of what we call now all our vintage synths. So Yamaha DX7s, Roland D50s, Selena string machines, lots of Oberheims, Mellotrons, ARP Quadras, ARP Omnis, ARP 2600s, Jupiter 8 and Prophets and Oberheims and so forth. So a big collection of synth waveforms, including heart sync oscillator sounds, more than enough at the time to keep you very, very busy with that variable architecture and those different assignments you could make in that multi-timbre environment as well. Pretty expensive at the time. I remember
they were 10,000, weren't they?
Well, the 2500 when it was released with the sampling option on the FX board was pretty expensive beast. And I can remember going around to see Noel Burgess from Vision 5.4, going around to his place and just drooling over I think he had the 2500 at the time, and that was a very nice piece of kit then. So that's my entry for that sort of milestone hardware event. And I guess like the Kurzweil is a little overlooked in that they're often regarded as a professional piano player's keyboard rather than a synth in and of its own right. So having that full complement of sampling capabilities and the DSP functions to do your traditional synths on top, and bringing those together in that multi-timbre environment with the effects, got you to that point where everything's in one.
Yeah. Do you ever need to upgrade?
Indeed, yeah.
And it's interesting. I think the reason why it gets overlooked, and a few other instruments that are along this line get overlooked, is just the sheer expense of them.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Right.
This is a big investment at the time.
I mean, well, not even could you ever. I mean, you were never looking at recuperating it.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking what, $10,000? 10. It was more. It was around about 10,000. I remember it was about that much in 1990 money, which is what, about 25,000 now, thereabouts. So it feels like that anyway.
Yeah. Because don't forget, you needed to add on the SCSI drives, the backups.
Plus the studio and all the rest of it. And, for 24 voices, that was a lot of dollars to sink in when you could just buy a sampler for $3,000 or $4,000 or whatever. I mean, it was for the average musician. It was so out of range. The average musician couldn't do it. And I think
even things like the S1000 were aspirational at the time.
Yeah, that's right. It was kind of like, oh my god, we can save up. If I wait 4 years and I can put it on lay-by, I might be able to get it. And I remember when samplers dropped in price enough that you could actually go and buy them. But yeah, anything like that was just. I mean, the music stores didn't even hold them in Brisbane. I don't think. I don't think anywhere actually did them.
No, I actually went to. I think the first time I saw it in retail was in Sydney.
Yeah.
So
it was behind glass, and a security guard walked you in. Sort of Tiffany style.
Yeah, so they were certainly the premium retail product in Australia.
Yeah. But even overseas, I mean, mind you, ironically enough, do you know that there's one currently on Facebook for $99? K2000.
Oh, okay.
It's not working. But the temptation to buy it just for just to have it there and look pretty is interesting. And it was a very boring looking keyboard. I think it was very functional. It was very functional across the board.
Yeah. Lots of menu diving. 530 pages for the user manual.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was something you learned. It was something you would spend 12 months learning. If you had the dollars to pay for it, then you had the time.
You had to invest the time in mastering that instrument.
And that was really okay. All right. Well, I think on that level, though, I'm going a little bit more modern.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Because I actually thought about this a little differently than you did. When you said peak synth, when we were talking about this, I was thinking about more culturally. But
well, of course we've got. Let's look at the releases at the time. Not that this is a musicology show. But when did Violator come out? That was 1990, wasn't it?
About
so very very big synth pop band at the time. Maybe that's a pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think who was using the K2000s as well.
Oh, I'm sure there's lots of
pages
at the time. Yeah.
But but as far as equipment is concerned, I find it a little bit interesting. So I think there's been lots of sort of the big thing it keeps coming back to me is this whole aspect of emulation. So we've done cycles of emulation. So we've gone from having the original instruments to some kind of VST, some kind of virtual analog or whatever, and eventually it sort of got into, and then you've got gone back to the cycles where they've gone back and using the original components. And I think what's interesting for me is you've kind of got the ability to now emulate anything.
Of course, yeah. In your pocket.
In your pocket. But I think what is interesting for me is that Roland took that a step further. So Roland's recent technology, and I'd say recent in the last 5 or 6 years, is not about emulating sound, right? It's about emulating the original circuit boards, right? And this is all this ACB technology and stuff like that, because they've gone, well, the components that we had just don't exist anymore. So I think for me, what's interesting is this whole ability to say, well, you've got a DSP, but it doesn't try and emulate sound. It just goes, how did the actual, the electrons fly around to produce what sound it needed to produce? And that's why we've suddenly got all the boutiques that have come out, and they're all using ACB technology, and and they're not quite perfect, but they're almost there. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to tell the difference between most of the equipment, to be honest with you. If I did a blind test, I'd be.
Yeah, similar to the JX3P.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, hang on, hold that thought.
Yeah, so that like you're saying, very, very hard pressed to tell the difference there between this sucker here,
right,
and the real deal. Maybe the noise.
Yeah, well, it's got a noise. It's got this ability to say, oh, the chorus is too noisy. Let's turn it off for this, because the original had a noisy chorus.
Yeah.
And really, this is what is interesting for me, is this ability to say, well, okay, we've gone beyond just, I'm going to try and make it sure it sounds the same. And like you get this with a lot of the Moog, software clones and stuff like that. For many years, they didn't sound like a Moog. And I guess the first real popular computer example of this was the Rebirth RB33, I can remember, 338, thank you, which was in 1998.
Yep.
And I remember we all downloaded it, and it was just, oh my god, this is awesome, and we can do it. And, and it doesn't quite sound like a 303, but it sounds good enough. But today we'd consider that quite harsh and not, certainly not up to standard and all the rest of it. The rest of it's pretty good. So I think in this ability to and Roland are now doing this with all their System 8s and their Roland Cloud and so forth. And it's this ability to say, okay, we're not going to try and, calculate the sound. We already know how it's supposed to sound because we've already done the circuits for it. And I think that's interesting. And I wonder if more people are going to go down that road for things that aren't Roland. So that's probably my sort of recent, as far as my recent on that one. And, they restrict the voices on these things, but I don't know if they needed to. I think they do it more for nostalgia than they do it for processing.
Yeah. So we've got very low cost DSP capable microcontrollers, the ARM chips that are inside the likes of these devices. And it's pretty interesting to see not just the the likes of Yamaha and Roland releasing products with that chipset, but the DIY synth community doing basically exactly the same thing with the same developer tools. Not necessarily the same, not necessarily the same gloss in terms of form factor and human machine interface, but a lot of interesting things in the DIY space.
Yeah. I think that actually for me that was probably one of the other areas that I think, if you're talking about peak synth, is the ability that anyone can go build one now.
Ah, okay, yes.
Right,
yes.
So I'm no longer restricted by my geographic location.
Yep.
I'm no longer restricted by my lack of education, almost, right? I can go online, I can look at how something's done, I can learn how to do it, and I can build it myself, easily sourcing components. Not even I don't have to wind my own anything anymore. I can just build it. And I've got 8-bit controllers if I need to do it, right up to whole Linux single board computers. It's not a barrier anymore.
There's so many projects out there, as you said, all the way from the small Arduino chipsets all the way up to the single board computers with the built-in quality audio. That's right,
and that's right. The DACs on them are beautiful. You're not actually having to sit there and go, oh, well, I kind of make it make sounds, but it sounds like someone's put through a distortion pedal unintentionally. And you know, they've got filters, and they have analog filters, and they'll have digital filters or whatever they particularly want to do. It's just time. And you see some amazing projects. You know, we talk about the Kyra. That is someone's personal project that they did in their spare time. They didn't sit there and sell their house. Well, maybe he did, I don't know. But he didn't sell the house to then try and build it. The biggest problem is obviously distribution. But, you know, it's not... And the Kickstarters. How many Kickstarters do you see?
Oh, of course, yeah.
You know? That's sort of an interesting one for me as well.
Okay. Well, should I do my last one?
Yeah, do your last one.
Okay, so this is a product that was released after the K2000. And let's cast our minds back to, again, Intel-based PCs. Pentium 3s were still around. You know, you were lucky if you had a 400 megahertz Pentium. That was pretty beefy at the time.
This was Pentiums without the floating point errors.
Well,
yeah. Anyway,
moving on. We were in the very early days of proper PC-based doors. So, you know, if we have a look on oldschooldoor.com, you know, we've moved on from you know, the Ataris and the limited Mac or the entry-level Macs.
Yeah, which were really just doing MIDI signaling. They had some... I think the Ataris could do some audio, but it was quite limited.
The later models, the TT, and there were expansion cards and so forth. Yeah. But it certainly wasn't designed as a multi-track I/O box. But it did have built-in MIDI on the STs.
Yeah.
And that was certainly a viable platform running a MIDI sequencer. And in fact, you know, many of us listening today have probably written many songs in that sort of environment. Limited processing power on the PC. Storage was still very expensive.
Yeah.
And around about the late 1990s, we started to see, as you mentioned, products like Rebirth coming onto the scene.
Yeah.
One of the more seminal products that was released by Sear Systems in 1997 was a product called Reality, and this is a software synthesizer.
Oh, okay.
Exclusive to Windows 95 or 98, and you had a limited number of sound cards that it was compatible with.
Right.
So you were somewhat locked into that environment.
Yeah.
But what I think one of the milestone events was the 1.5 release of Reality, which came out in 98. And
I'm looking this up as John's talking.
This product gave you five different synth topologies, and the traditional subtractive synthesis was there. The physical modelling was there. We also saw FM with four operators and the ability to put samples into carriers and modulators as well.
Oh, okay.
So it also supported a modal synth method to do your bells and your mallets. And it had a basic effects capability. But some of the really important capabilities was that this is one of the first dedicated software synths that you could do with low latency in those early PC environments.
Yeah, because that's one of the big things, was that, you know, you weren't rendering it off. It was actually real time.
If you had a good enough PC.
Yeah, and enough, you know, when RAM was, you know, if you had a gig of RAM, you were doing well.
So this gave you 16-part multi-timbrality. It had 128 note polyphony, depending on your CPU, and
I can't seem to find it online.
Well, here we'll put a screenshot of that here.
Yeah.
So the ability to mix and match your different synth topologies in one product. That was a pretty important milestone, because, you know, previously, and with the synths at the time, you were limited to, well, this is FM.
Yeah, well, the Rebirth was just, here's a 303 emulator. You didn't get to play with it, it's that and that kind of thing. And really, there was only a couple of other sort of drum synths, and they were PCM. So for the fact that they had this ability to kind of do everything is quite phenomenal.
Yeah. So some of the algorithms were more processor intensive, so the physical modelling stuff, if you're doing any of the sort of pluck string type sounds, that tended to chew up the processing power. But the ability to have basically all of those voices across all of your channels, that was a big breakthrough at the time. And even if you didn't have a good enough PC, it still had a capture utility, so you could play the MIDI file in real time. And it would actually save the session to a WAV file, and then you could import that into your DAW as well. Now, unfortunately, that product never escaped that Windows 95, Windows 98, DirectX sound card driver environment. It never made the leap off the PC. Never went to the likes of VST on the PC and the Mac.
Yeah.
Very much what's the word?
Abandoned, lost product.
Yes. So the fact that it the 1.5 release also supported sound fonts as well.
Oh wow.
That was a really important.
Sound fonts is one that I never. It was kind of like the sound fonts themselves should have done much better had there been a really good sound font editor.
True. Yes.
Because there was some really good hardware support for them.
Yeah.
And there was,
but
it never made that leap from. Again, it was another one that never made the leap from computer into actual hardware samplers. It would have been nice to see that.
We're still on dial-up at the time.
Yeah.
And getting a 16 meg sound font was still a challenge. So the fact that it did come with some good orchestral sounds as well, lots of really good synth patches as well. So that sort of takes us to that jump into the late 90s, and I guess the real start of virtual synthesis inside your PC and in particular your DAW, when we see the likes of Cubase VST coming on.
I think the problem I have with all of that early stuff though was it was relying on what were pretty much atrocious sound cards at the time.
Indeed, yes.
So, and I think that's where they lost, in the sense that people weren't going to use them commercially because, well, the best sound cards at the time were Sound Blaster cards.
Yeah, you had to go and get an AWE 64 Gold.
Yes.
To get the better quality audio outputs.
And even that was a bit...
the digital out.
Yeah, version. And that was a bit... And of course, if your software is limited to certain cards, it's not going to... I mean, the original AWEs, you could literally hit record and shout at them, and they would record your audio. Right, because they had
the microphonics and the
because it literally would pick up from the different coils on the board. The thing, I mean, and so they had.
And we were still fighting with full duplex recording at the time. Remember, there were issues with getting audio in at the same time as getting audio out. So that was a challenge back in the day.
And video cards that would like to take over bus the bus resources. So suddenly they would drop audio. Priority quite a lot, just so the video card could look a little bit faster and things like that. So
so that's my thoughts on a good enough platform to keep you going for a very, very long time.
But I disagree with you, because it wasn't a good enough platform to go.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, your platform still required another platform, which was Windows 95. That doesn't go. You couldn't then pick this software up today and go, I'm going to run it. And I think that's the biggest problem I have with the K2000, sorry, not K5000, the K2000. If it's one still running and the hardware is not dead, which there's still a lot out there, you could pick it up, reuse it today, and make sounds.
Yeah.
So I agree with you on that one. This one, you can't. I can't sit there and say,
It's a moment in time, and even to resurrect an old 98 system would be so
how long
tedious
will
today.
and not even that, to resource it, right? So you can't even just say, oh well, I'll get that 98 system up and running that I've had sitting in the shed. The actual components have all crapped out and all the rest of it. I tried to resurrect a machine recently for Windows XP, and that was hell on wheels alone. So that was trying to use floppy drives, which was horrible. And I got rid of all the floppies recently, and thank you to the person who purchased them and had me ship 11 kilos of floppy drives to Melbourne. I think it was to Melbourne.
Enjoy.
They paid for shipping. Anyway, so it was one of those things, that's why I'm going to disagree with you, because if you're going to talk about something that's a peak in moment, a peak synth that you don't need to ever worry about, it's got to be something that you can also go, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to use it 10 years later.
Yes.
And I can't. I guess that's why I'm still very much a hardware guy. But, and I think there's been some really good sort of entries on that level. That's not to say there hasn't been VSTs, for example, that have existed.
We saw that explosion in the early 2000s.
But there's still some of them are still existing around to now. But that's always been my big issue with a lot of the sort of the software only stuff. Is it doesn't live. It doesn't survive long enough.
Yeah.
So I'll be very interested to see
comments.
Put some comments in. Write some long-winded diatribe to tell us we were completely wrong, and we'll appreciate it. Actually, that would be very, very cool. I'm actually going to leave it there because we've actually done a really, really long episode, and I hope you've actually stuck it out for this complete time. We're just into the new year. Do you feel like you've escaped all the Christmas and New Year's stuff?
Barely.
Oh, that's good, because I've actually got something that I'm going to play you. And I'm going to end it off with something that I found on Facebook, and I blame Tycho Brahe for this, and you can see why. And it's my you've escaped Christmas and New Year's, but you haven't really. So on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you, John, for coming in.
Thank you.
If you're interested in coming along and doing a show, let me know. I'm happy to sit here and chat to you, obviously. All right, on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. See ya.